Hi, folks.
Hi.
Hi, everybody.
Nice. Yard's in the house. Pam.
Angela. Hi, Joe. How's it going?
Hey, good to see you.
Hey, welcome.
Yeah, long time no see.
Yeah.
Vin Marzullo's back. Nice to see you.
Static. We got Benjamin in the house. Melanie, welcome. Angela, welcome back. Oh, nice group today. So fun.
Hi, Adrian.
Sorry about that. Come on, man.
Chris from Jersey's in the house.
Welcome.
He's in the house. Yeah, that one.
Rock the house.
Hi, Karen.
Hi.
Oh, love it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. We will still have a couple people joining us, trickling in, but Lizzie, would you like to get us started, please?
Absolutely. It's so nice to see everybody's beautiful faces here today. Thank you for coming. My name is Lizzie Rougeau, and I'm the Deputy Director at the City of Providence's Department of Art, Culture, and Tourism. And I'd like to shout out to the team because nothing would be possible if we didn't all work together to try to make things happen. Of course, the director, Stephanie Fortunato, the Cultural Affairs Manager, Gina Rodriguez, our special, right there she's waving, our Special Projects Manager, Micah Salkind, and of course, Lael Tucker, the Director of Turnaround Arts Providence. I also want to give a big shout out. I'm just going to keep saying shout out. I wish there was another way to say that. A big mention to our artist facilitation team who's made this process a beautiful, casual, lovely, and important one. Yes, all of those things at the same time. It's Ashay Rivera Rios, MJ Robinson, Tracy Johnson, and our Zoom production manager, Janaya Kizzy. Thank you all so much for all the work you do. Our sector alchemists today, Angel Newman from AS220, has worked very hard to put together this meeting and these ideas and these concepts. So I'd like to give a special thanks to her and a special nod of gratitude. And we're here today as a part of the Creative Providence planning process. And some of you may remember some of our first cultural plan that we put together 10 years ago. And now that one is up for revision, and that's why we're here today. And I think that this particular studio is very important. It's very important to me personally, so I'm really glad to be here giving these remarks. I believe, and I've tried to advocate for the success of individual artists in Providence my entire life, no matter where, in what function I was working, trying to make sure artists got paid, trying to make sure artists were at the tip of the spear in all thoughts and policy. It's an incredibly important issue to me. Artists need full agency. They need a Bill of Rights. They need a UBI, which I just found out means a universal basic income. Artists need to feel supported. Everything we do, everything we touch is creative, and it's created by artists. And we are all creative. So that's important to know as well. And we need to make sure that artists have a container in which they feel respected and can eat and live and breathe and have a doctor and all of these things. So this is a really important studio to me, and I'm really, really glad to be here, and especially touching that Angel Newman from AS220 is leading this charge in this particular studio, because both of those things, AS220 and Angel Newman, are magical. So thank you very much. I'd like to introduce now Miss Angel Newman. Thank you.
Thank you, Lizzie. Thank you so much. It is really an honor to be here with everyone today, and just like give it up for the goddess Lizzie Arugio. Like, we snap it up for Lizzie. All that you do, Lizzie, there's no amount of words that can really sum up just like how much you mean to our city, to our community, to AS220, and to me. So thank you for everything that you've done. Hey everyone, I'm really amped to see so many people on this studio call. This is amazing. For those of you who I do not know, my name is Angel Newman. I am an anti-racist organizer, educator, artist, rapper, and currently have the honor of serving as AS220's Director of Programs. I've been at AS220 for 17 years. It's a complicated, long story, which I won't get into right now, but just know I've traveled through many programs at AS220, starting at AS220 Youth, when it was called Broad Street Studio back in the day, and was really mentored into a position of leadership by folks at AS220 and people in the community to be able to sit here with you all today. So I'm really excited about this. So culture is a big part of how we define ourselves in the world. It includes the food we eat, the language we speak, the stories we tell, the traditions we have, the art we make, and the values we hold. As the city of Providence builds its new cultural plan, we ask, who makes up this city's creative workforce? What art forms and cultural practices are recognized and supported? What support do creative practitioners need to thrive, especially now that the sector has been disseminated by the COVID-19 pandemic? How can art and culture build a truly equitable, healthy, and vibrant city? As many of you know, AS220 embraces a very broad definition of art, and so we wanted this conversation to include the rich array of cultural practitioners in our city. You know, not just visual artists, musicians, dancers, theater makers, writers, designers, craftspeople, but also tattoo artists, hair braiders, storytellers, nail technicians, chefs, and cooks, health practitioners, and much more. I'm sure that this first attempt to gather the broadest array of cultural practitioners falls short in some way, but I hope that as we continue to have these conversations, we can all do our part in seeking feedback and elevating the voices of those who do not neatly fit into or self-identify as artists. On behalf of AS220, I'd like to extend a sincere and warm thank you to the Department of Arts, Culture, and Tourism for not only supporting and helping to coordinate today's conversation, but also for supporting work in artists, arts organizations like AS220, and our sector on a local, regional, and national level for the past decade. I would also like to thank our special guest speaker for the day, Shay Rivera-Rios, a revolutionary artist who you'll hear more from later, and a super shout out to our ACT appointed artist facilitators, MJ Robinson and Tracy Johnson. MJ and Tracy helped AS220, really me, with all of the logistics for this event. And I really wouldn't have been able to pull this off without y'all. So super shout out. Another amazing shout out to Janaea Kizzy for DJing our Zoom tech situation, which I am trash at. So I'm really happy Janaea is here helping with that. Thank you so much. And last but certainly not least, thank you to Vadik Kuumba, Christopher Johnson, and Valerie Tutson, our 3 divine artists and organizers who will be facilitating our breakout rooms later on today. All the people who I mentioned above inspire me greatly, and I'm sure that's true for many of you who are here on this call as well. So before we officially start jumping into some of these really juicy topics that we have to discuss today, I want to introduce AM. Pronouns are they, them, theirs. AM is an interdisciplinary artist, co-director of the House of Glitter, Performance Lab, Visuals and Media Arts Manager at AS220 Youth, and artist in residence with ACT's Creative Community Health Worker Fellowship. AM is going to come up and do our land acknowledgement before we jump into our program.
Yes, hello. Thank you for that intro, Angel. Appreciate that. I appreciate everyone being on this call today. This means a lot to me as a young artist. You know, when this happened 10 years ago, I was 17. So it feels good to be stepping in and starting my role kind of where I'm at today and being supported by ACT and my work through AS220. It really has been the base and the structure for how I show up as an artist. So thank you. I'm so grateful for this community and being a part of this healing, what this is what really is. As Lizzie mentioned, like, we need a container to feel respected and supported and not to just survive, but to thrive. So to open up today, just want to take a moment to breathe, to get on the same page, to feel together. So let's take a minute, maybe close the eyes or find a soft gaze. Maybe you can roll the shoulders back and find a long, tall spine. Take a moment just to tap into the natural breath. Notice any sensations, what you hear, smell, feel. And once you're centered here in your body, I'll invite us into 4 collective breaths. A breath for the ancestors that guide us always, breathing in and out. A breath for those whose ancestors have been stolen and those whose ancestors have been stolen from, breathing in and out. A breath for this land that has been colonized, breathing in and out. And a final collective breath for community healing, breathing in and out. And I'll turn it back over to you, Angel, as you return to the screen. Just remember, you can always come back to that breath, back to that healing, back to a moment of centering for yourself. Thank you.
AM, thank you so much. That was so powerful, and really your practice of breathing that you brought to AS220 and I think our community, it wasn't until I met you that I actually started to breathe, to center myself and to acknowledge my ancestors and to, you know, really anchor us in the work that we need to do. It wasn't until I met you that I started doing that. And I have to say, I think it's been life-saving, life-changing, and is gonna help our whole community continue to push towards the social justice and goals that we have within and outside of the arts and culture sector. So thank you so much for that. You're a hero. Awesome, cool. So I'm gonna do a quick overview of our agenda today. We have lots going on and I think it's gonna be a real fun time. So in a few, we're gonna have Ruth Harvey and Neil Walsh from AS220 talk to us about some bright spots on a national level, like what cities are doing it right, what cities have figured out systems to actually support artists, not just professionally, but from like a health perspective, what cities are building sustainable infrastructure to really elevate the voices of artists and take care of them in a way that maybe Providence might want to as we, write this new cultural plan for the next 10 years. So that will be coming up next, followed by our keynote speaker, Shay Rivera-Rios. which will then be followed by a short Q&A. After Shay's talk, we will go into a 5-minute break so folks can kind of refill their water bottles, have a bio break, get the kids situated, whatever your situation is, we'll have some time for that. And then when we come back, we'll head into breakout rooms, which will be facilitated by Vadik Kawumba, Valerie Tutson, and Christopher Johnson. AM will then bring us back together to discuss takeaways from the breakout sessions, and ACT will wrap us up with next steps. So does that sound good? How's everyone feeling? Can I get like a thumbs up if you're feeling okay about all this? And maybe you're on a range, a spectrum of here to here, but I'm hoping, I see a lot of thumbs up. That's great. Perfect. Okay, awesome. So without further ado, I am now going to pass it to my colleagues, Ruth Harvey, the development director at AS220. AS220's development director, and Neil Walsh, our galleries director. And they're going to talk to us about some national models that might be interesting to us. So Ruth and Neil, take it away.
Thank you.
Hello. Neil and I are actually in the same room, so that might have been a bad mistake. I don't know. Let me just share my screen if I can. Yes. 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 I'll just start this guy here. My internet is slow.
Maybe
so
I'll go to
apologize
another
about
room.
That. Oopsie, what am I doing? I'm not sharing. I'm wanting to present. That's what I'm doing. So while Neil moves to a place where we don't get feedback, yeah, the irony that me, who I'm from New Zealand, that I'm kind of using talking about a couple of national examples of places that are doing a pretty good job of supporting artists. It seems a bit weird that a foreigner would be the one who's involved in that conversation. I don't know. But, I've lived in a lot of places around the world who are doing amazing things to support artists. I feel like the collaborative nature of Providence, how people really want to help each other, is just pretty amazing and special. So I think, yeah, anyway, Neil's going to start us off. Neil, are you ready now?
Yes. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So I thought I would start with pretty simple and just what is a art and culture plan. This is from the Americans for the Arts. It's a little bit dated. Cultural planning is a public process in which representatives of our community undertake a comprehensive community assessment and create a plan of implementation for future cultural programming. Successful cultural plans address the needs, opportunities, and cultural resources of the community. Cultural planning may be narrowly focused on the needs of artists, arts organizations, and audiences. However, cultural planners are increasingly considering the role of culture in resolving broader community issues. And I think this was from I think 2014, perhaps. It's dated because I think most people will agree that it's important that a cultural plan includes the communities and people that it's going to impact. So thinking of a cultural plan that is looking and getting input from everyone living in the city where the cultural plan is going to work. Because how can you have art and culture plan without hearing from artists and people in the communities that it's essentially about, right? Because our cities and towns, we create culture. That is really the heart of our being as our city. Our economy is driven by art and culture, but also as human beings, it's very much art and culture is what we thrive on. One of the cultural plan I looked at the most and was just thinking about, and because it's sort of a similar city, I was looking at the Worcester cultural plan in Worcester, Massachusetts, not too far. And this is, they just wrote their very first cultural plan. It's just, I think it was just last year they wrote it. And there's a few things within their cultural plan that I think there's definitely things here in Providence that we are doing. But there's some things that the main one that stuck out to me is right in the first few lines of the plan. And it's, the Worcester cultural plan is unique in that it's embedded in the city's master plan. So arts and culture are catalysts for creative economic developments, embedding art into our streetscape and design, lifting up our rich immigrant experiences, and shining a spotlight on all we offer, knowing that great cities embrace arts and culture. And as you go through, and I'll drop the link into the chat in a little bit, of the cultural plan, and a link to the plan, and they have, it's all broken down. They have like the 20 goals that they're looking to accomplish. But it also, they talk about how they're going to accomplish that, and with different departments within the city. So it's not just the good folks at art, culture, and tourism, but the whole city is engaged with enacting and creating this plan, and it being not just a plan, but a call to action. So that was something that really stood out and like resonated, I think. And I think that, and I think it resonated because I also think it resonates with like a lot of folks here in Providence and the work that we're trying to do, and really ground that work within our communities. And a couple of the other highlights from it is there like emphasis on cultural equity, access, and inclusion, including mobility. We're seeing the challenges of Kennedy Plaza, for instance, but like having these accessible spaces throughout the city, and the importance of transportation. And also leadership development from communities of color holding key positions in existing institutions, civic organizations, political arena, and social and cultural, critical to the community's success, right? So it's the real inclusivity where real leadership happening. And so those are some of the couple of things that really stood out, that I think resonates with the work that is happening in Providence right now, that we can consider to being part of the plan being developed today or now. Ruth, do you want to talk a little bit about maybe Pittsburgh or?
Yeah, I do. So just really quickly, one thing that we liked about the Worcester plan also is that not only did they have goals, but they listed their top priorities, like this is where we're going to start. And I really appreciated that. I was glancing at the old Providence cultural plan yesterday, and truth be told, it was just like so overwhelming. I was like, well, where would you even start? Where did they even start? And also, Neil, you liked this this billboard, right? From a project that they did. So hopefully this is symbolic of the truth of our lives, that better days are ahead, right? So yeah, I decided to focus. Whoops.
I was just going to say, this is a sign that was part of a cultural partnership in the city of Worcester that went up just this year in July, trying to tapping into the current COVID and just sort of trying to be positive in these trying times that we're having.
Yeah. So I'll just go super quickly because I know that we don't have a lot of time. But I was looking at Pittsburgh, the relationship between Providence and Pittsburgh. Some of you may be aware that we've kind of had this little pipeline going between Providence and Pittsburgh informally for a while now, where artists and collaborators have been kind of coming and going and supporting each other's work. And I think that something about Pittsburgh that is shared with Providence is, and I'm sure we all feel this now that COVID has hit, just how critical the ecosystem is, right? Like it's, in order to have a robust arts and culture scene, you also need to have all sorts of supports around that. That includes other businesses and housing, transport, healthcare, schooling, all that kind of stuff. So, you know, I think Pittsburgh is quite interesting for sharing a lot of characteristics with Providence. There is a real range of different types of arts organizations. So I was chatting to a couple of friends who live in Pittsburgh about, you know, what makes it work or not work there for artists. So I think my board member and wonderful human being, Janella, found me some stats, and she says that there's 20,000 full-time equivalent jobs in the arts and culture sector in Allegheny County. Formal arts and culture organizations like the 1-2 small music venues, friends like Boom Concepts, who kind of started pretty DIY, and spaces that are kind of similarly industrial to some of AST20's, Providence's spaces, like the Carry blast furnaces, where people just do temporary pop-up stuff. So much by institutions. I'm not saying that we are, but and that there's a real let's just do it attitude with less red tape. And so it's kind of like a mulch that's happening there, which I think is similar to what's happened in Providence. You know, there was an abandoned kind of downtown core that the Pittsburgh Cultural Trust has redeveloped, 14 blocks. They've had, you know, they've got some large foundations there that support work. So one of the artists I was talking to was saying that, yeah.
We are losing some of your audio. Could you turn your video off?
Yes,
because that
carry
might
on.
help us hear you better.
Sure. Let me just see if I can do that. Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Nope. Yes. Cool. So I don't know where I cut out, but I was saying that Pittsburgh endowments and artist funds that's supporting individual artists' work in the range of $20,000, which I think is pretty amazing. And also supporting people with fiscal sponsorship so that they can temporary projects that are able to employ a broad range of cultural workers. You don't have to be working within an existing organization. We've got artist housing as well. So I think that there's a real similarity there between us and Pittsburgh. I think, you know,
Ruth, I think we're gonna
they share some of the challenges
Hey, Ruth, you're cutting out pretty bad, so I think we're just gonna move on to the next section.
And that's, am I still cutting?
Yeah, you're cutting out pretty bad, so I think that it looks like Neil left something in the chat for Worcester. Ruth, if you could leave some information about Pittsburgh for folks, if you have it, that'd be good. And I think we should move on to the next section just because the sound is really cutting out pretty bad. So if you could just leave something in the chat, that would be awesome. Thank you, Ruth and Neil, so much for your presentation. I'm sorry the audio is a little wonky. I wonder if it's the weather today. Am I coming through okay for folks? Yeah, okay, all right, that sounds good. Thank you so much, Ruth Harvey, our Director of Development at AS220, and then Neil Walsh, our Galleries Director. Thank you so much for the information. Please check out the links that will be in the chat. Awesome. So next up, I have the extraordinary pleasure to introduce someone who's not only been an inspiration to me, but also a mentor and a primary influence for why I continue to do the work that I do in and around the arts and cultural sector. So we have Shay Rivera-Rios, pronouns they, them, is an interdisciplinary artist, cultural strategist, and arts administrator. Their artistic creations span a myriad of topics, from home to capitalism to queerness and magic. Rivera has 10 years of experience in the nonprofit arts sector, intersecting creative practice with urban planning and racial equity. Rivera was also former artistic / co-director of AS220, a renowned arts organization and creative incubator in Providence, Rhode Island, and successor to AS220 founder Bert Krinka, who maybe some of you know. After 8 years at AS220, Rivera took on the role of Director of Inclusive Regional Development at MIT CoLab in the Department of Urban Studies and Planning of MIT, where they co-designed and implemented workshops on collective leadership and community innovation in Columbia. Today, Rivera is an independent artist and consultant specializing in arts management and the intersection of culture and urban planning. Rivera has a BA in psychology and sociology from the University of Puerto Rico and graduate studies in contemporary media and culture from the University of the Sacred Heart, San Juan, Puerto Rico. They serve on the City of Providence's Design Review Committee of the Department of Planning, appointed by Mayor Jorge Elorza of Providence, as well as the mayor's Latinx task force in response to the COVID-19 crisis. Shay is also on the board of directors of the Alliance of Artist Communities. Key artistic projects are the Luna Loba Performance Series and the Fantasy Island Transmedia Project. So I would ask that everyone help me welcome Shay Rivera-Rios for their talk about the creative economy here in Providence. Shay, we're so happy to have you. Everyone clap it up or snap it up.
Wow, extra humbled for that introduction, Angel. Thank you so much. Thank you to Angel Newman and AS220. Thank you to the Department of Arts, Culture, and Tourism for all this amazing work that we're all doing. It's really, really great to be here with you. And I also appreciate AM's opening and the statement of having us find ways to not just survive, but to thrive. And I think that is exactly why we're here today. So I'm going to speed through some of the projects that I've done, and I invite you to just look with me at some of the pieces that might be helpful in your own project management or your own leveraging of resources. And then we'll take a moment to stop and really look at what does it take to carry out a project, and how can we create thriving pathways as artists. That is the hope, right? It's always difficult, but it's always possible as well. So let's jump right in, and I thank you for your patience because I'm going to share a PowerPoint, and I might be coming back and forth to see your lovely faces as well. So let me share my screen here. Cool. All right. So creative workforce, yes, we need to have these conversations. So I am Shay Rivera, born and raised in Puerto Rico, Boriquen, Taino land occupied by the settlement of Puerto Rico, and it is the oldest colony of the United States of America. I say that wherever I go because part of that links and connects to AM's statement of how to acknowledge our history and unearth the stories that have been taken from us. And it's a moment to remember and celebrate history and position that. So this is a photo of my town, Corozal. Rural folk, mountain folk, and super proud. And my parents are beautiful herbalists and people connected to the land. This is a photo of some musicians from my town as well. So here we are. I like showing it because some people don't know. This is the shape of Puerto Rico and Boriquen. That is the Taino name. And now I've been living in Providence for 10 years. And those 10 years have been incredibly enriched by my experience at AS220, working with Angel and Ruth and Neil and the thousands of artists that AS220 supports. So I was there for 8 years, like Angel mentioned, 3 of which I stepped in as co-director as well. And after that, I did a 1-year crazy thing where I worked at MIT in the urban planning department. And this was an interesting change. AS220 as a creative incubator of artists, supporting the work and skill sets of all these incredible multi-talented artists in the city. And then now entering this space of planning, if you will. So this was a project supporting young people in Colombia at the intersection of activism and new governance. And liberation, and they were launching cultural projects. So it was interesting because I was always thinking about Providence and how we do amazing work and how it is important to connect to other countries, other circles of artists to keep enriching our own practice. And that leads me to working deeper in this intersection of planning with my colleague Vadik Kumba. We're working on a process in Boston that connects residents of neighborhoods to reimagine a policy and ordinance to support reducing building emissions. So this intersection of climate justice and resilience that Angel and other folks also are involved in Providence as well. But I bring this up because artists don't just create fine arts or objects or products. Angel and I had a great conversation in preparation for this session. It's like there are so many ways that we practice and build economy as artists. And that's something that we'll get into more today with you as I continue to speed through these projects. And then of course, with my colleagues, the fantastic art facilitators, Tracy and MJ, this really important part of policy that can help ensure that we have a creative sector that responds to our needs through this new cultural plan. And I'll also say when I decided to move from Puerto Rico, I've gone through a process of grief of recognizing that that was economic displacement. I used to think that it was like I chose to, but as a young person, there was no future for me in that moment. And I needed to leave and Providence embraced me. But I say this because as a total nerd, it really impressed me that Providence had a cultural plan because it shows commitment to artists, and also the fact that public officials were trying to conversate, to talk with folks, to see what artists really need, what residents really need. And really this conversation that AS220 has pushed for a long time, that we need to dismantle what artist means. And like Angel said really well, there are so many creative practices that don't get recognized as valid artistic practice, and we need to change that because our communities are multi-talented and entrepreneurial in new and engaging and innovative ways. And part of that is also how young people, youth culture is also constantly creating new culture. So big props up to AS220, AS220 youth for always supporting that work. So I want to take a moment to ground us here in this. Some of you have seen it. And I invite MJ to just read through this moment, and we can close our eyes and just listen and ground ourselves for the moment, because we are living a really important transformation right now. So MJ, would you mind just reading through this piece so that we can close our eyes and breathe and just listen to where we are right now?
The pandemic is a portal. Arundhati Roy. Historically, pandemics have forced humans to break with the past and imagine their world anew. This one is no different. It is a portal, a gateway between one world and the next. We can choose to walk through it, dragging the carcasses of our prejudice and hatred, our avarice, our data banks and dead ideas, our dead rivers and smoky skies behind us. Or we can walk through lightly with little luggage, ready to imagine another world and ready to fight for it.
Thank you, MJ. This is the call to action, y'all. All right, thank you so much, MJ. So yes, it's COVID. Yes, we have so many things. The country's facing a reckoning, long overdue. So do we continue? Of course we do. And, we must learn the ways of the force that come with us, follow storm. We have the power to change because we're artists and creative people, and we're often doing that. Resilience is something that's wired in our DNA. So it's really amazing to get the chance to figure out, what does that mean? How can we reimagine our world right now and our practice, new economies? So I wanted to share some really nerdy, gritty, ugly numbers, but just to give a little bit of a sense, because you can't talk about creative workforce without celebrating the amount of economy that we build. So these are old numbers by the NEA. It's in 2017. Hopefully they'll do new numbers soon. But, I think it's important to recognize art and culture as a legit sector that produces money. It produces economy. And so 877 billion has been contributed by the arts and culture sector. The arts contribute more to national economy than other sectors like transportation, travel and tourism, mining, all these things. And more than half of the artists in the US, 50%, 58% are employed in the private for-profit sector. There were 5.1 million arts and culture sector jobs in America, United States, 2017, accounting for 3.4% of all jobs. And compensation for us cultural workers totaled $405 billion. So creativity and originality I don't know what they're telling you of what is gonna be the hot thing and the most important skill to have. But, AS220 Youth has said it for a long time, social emotional skills, creativity, originality, and initiative are some of the most powerful skills that we can have right now, and we have them. So I just wanted to really quickly show, this is a little bit of a breakdown of how they're categorizing the arts sector, which is kind of clumsy, but broadcasting, publishing, motion picture, performing arts, and arts-related trade. All this brings in and generates income. And in Rhode Island, we have about $2 million that are produced by the arts and culture sector and about 17,000 jobs. So this is serious. Our worth is not based on how many hotels we can pack or how many restaurants we can pack. That's just another ring in the concentric circle of the power that we bring. But we are creative economies just with the projects that we create. And many of us are evolving our practice. So this is my studio. This is where I'm a house troll now. We're all COVID house trolls, clicking away in a little corner of the house. This is where I work and where all the magic happens. I wanted to share that because we all have that corner and it's super important. So I really, really center my creative practice, my studio practice, and just always find some time to keep that discipline, which is super important. And I'll show you one of the projects that Angel mentioned, Fantasy Island. I'll zoom by it just so you know how it grew and how I leveraged it to release other opportunities. So I'm from Puerto Rico. We can have a separate conversation about all the things that are happening there. but a lot of Puerto Rico saw a really critical political movement in the past 4 years rise up. And as an artist, you know, we're communicators. We feel like we want to contribute to storytelling and changing the world and enriching and educating folks. So I created this project. And this was what was happening actually last year, people taking to the streets, really creating the opportunity for like demanding for the governor to resign. It's like something really beautiful that happened where we were all connected. Like Adrienne Marie Brown says, like we're flocks. We have things that connect us and move us. I share the horses image in particular because that's my people from Corozal, like people who like take care of land and animals. So that piece, that fantasy island basically looked at, I was wondering, how the hell do I talk about this? And, you know, looking at the disparity of all these luxury properties that were being sold in the face of a crisis. So I started to just collage, do digital work, like put mashups, remixes together to tell the story. The project really started at AS220 in the project space, props to Neil, where we had community conversations about capitalism and displacement and gentrification. And that opened the door to show in other places because galleries, once they saw the documentation, I could send it to other places and they would pick up because galleries, museums, and all these cultural centers, they look for artists to showcase, especially if you're speaking to the truth of the moment, because we all need the arts to help us translate where we live and how we are existing right now. So this happened, the project got picked up by MACLA, Movimiento de Arte y Cultura Latina in San Jose, California. They paid for it. We projected, we did all the things. You can do that. You can repackage your work and send it and get compensation and just collaborate with more people. Also, the gallery of one of my alma maters in Sagrado Corazon also picked up the work and they compensated. And you can see like you can continue to send because these work does not become irrelevant. You reconfigure, and as long as it's creating public dialogue that is meaningful, you should continue believing in your work. Sometimes we get caught in this thing that we have to produce new things all the time. We do, but also don't drop a project just because you're like seduced by a new idea. Keep your new ideas and work on them, but always treat your old ones with respect. So yeah, that led into other workshops and everything. So I'm also a performance artist, and I bring this up because at AS220 as well, I launched Luna Loba, which at this point is a collective of, wow, more than 90 artists have performed, including Angel, Vatic, so many people. And that happened for 4 years of curating events. You know, something that some people think is like an event is not just a one-time thing. You connect it and it's a thread and it's generative and it builds up. You can start with a small event and end up with a full-fledged festival like Future Worlds, for example, that Angel has led, and other amazing projects. So I'm just gonna skip through, and that turned into this new large-scale production with an amazing group of artists right now at Waterfire. So these are just some pieces of work, commissions as well for the census, a piece I did for Vatic Kumba as well as I continued. You're seeing like I've been evolving and adding to the practice of animation. It's like just keep adding little details to your work. That always brings up and opens more doors. And then this past project with arts, culture, and tourism as well, just, you know, helping other artists. Like the main driver is to create projects that can pay people and can get work out there. And sometimes the hardest moments are the moments where we can shine brightest. Like Christopher Johnson actually mentioned before when we were getting ready for this session, how important it has been to continue creating work for artists, especially through social media and all these other ways of doing this, because it continues to help line up work and also we just thrive. So this was a really special project. This is some work by Tracy Johnson Lavoy, part of the Banners Project, and Raul, former AS220 youth alumni who has his own tattoo shop in Atwells. Go get inked. Yeah, I'm like gonna zoom past all these things. I just want you to see. This is a large public art project I'm consulting in Holyoke, project led by Puerto Ricans, and they're branding Main Street as a Puerto Rican hub. And then, let's take a breath. Let's take a breath before we jump into income. Now, am I good on time? Do I have 10 minutes? Okay.
Yeah, you're good, Shay. Keep going. You're killing it. Keep going.
Thank you. So I showed you those because it is, I hope you can see the through line of how like a small idea can like start becoming bigger and bigger and bigger and become different projects. So how do I build income? Super transparent with you all, because I think more of us need to be like, know this as well. And obviously I'm not an expert, but I'll just share what I know. So how I get income is landing project contracts. So projects, I'll tell you who the partnerships are, but contracts to design a community project or a festival or something like that. Consulting for other organizations that want to upgrade their practices, be on point and relevant to community. Grants as well. Many of us know that we have to apply for grants, even if it's sometimes a pain in the butt. Performances. A lot of people get contracts also doing performances. And then there's a set of educational engagements. Artists are educators in many ways as well. And we do make income by workshops, speaking gigs, panel discussions, and just other symposiums and other ways of convening people and having space to learn and exchange together. And lastly, commissions. Like you saw, the Fantasy Island project received a few commissions because I sent out my work to different places. So expenses. It's super important to think about this. Sometimes we get a grant, $5,000, and you're like, oh my God, $5,000, that's a lot of money. And then you're like, oh crap, I have to pay people, I have to pay supplies. And then you didn't pay yourself. So something I've learned, and actually thank you to ACT, Gina, and other folks for being like, you have to pay yourself. You have to pay yourself first, because otherwise you forget. And we're givers. We give and uplift so many people, but we can't forget about ourselves, because we need to like take care of ourselves in order to take care of other people. But artist and design fees, all the artists that you pay, project supplies, what are the supplies you need to carry this out? Project production, what will it take to produce that mural? What will it take to cut the vinyl, to like install? All those things. I have so much respect for Neil Walsh, because I try to pretend I can install work, but nope, Neil has schooled me. And project management time. You know, these things take time. A lot of people don't understand or can't immediately see that it's not just producing a mural. It's not just producing a set of animations or an installation. It's like you have time during your week that you're spending, and your time is money. So that also needs to be considered. And then other things, like if you have to drive around, or like, you know, other expenses that you might have. So always think about that when you're like building your projects. And this to me is kind of the most important part, because a lot of us forget to do this. And this is the calling. This is the moment, the calling for us to do this more. What is the impact? So how many artists did you pay? Keep track of that, because you can go back, and when you want to find additional funding, you say, I paid 10 artists, 30 artists, they got paid. And how much went to artist fees? Even if it's $5,000, $6,000, $500, who cares? Just say that is important. You're getting other people paid. How many creative businesses got paid? You know, printing things with Jack Biden in the print shop. That's a creative business you're supporting. You're supporting the sector by investing in other artists and other work. And also try to do that more. If you have money, invest in your circle and your ecosystem, because you're building economy for everyone. Yeah, in-kind work. Somebody once told me, you know, you build relationships, and sometimes people will do something for you and be involved in your project because it's you and you've built the trust. And that means that they might choose to be like, you don't have to pay me that much, you can have a reduced rate, but add it in the in-kind, that they are doing an additional $500 of free labor, because people need to know that artists, even if they're getting paid $500, their labor costs $2,000. So that also funders know they need to step up their game. And like, that's the actual value of the work. I think I have 5 more minutes. Could you leverage additional support? So what can you, Like if you start a project, what are other things who you can pitch to support more of the project? You can go to ACT, you can go to another organization, like have people help you grow your work. And that this project grow or become generative. That is like a huge, huge piece of impact. Okay, so partnerships. How do you make money? Who contracts you? Networks of other artists. That's where you can build a whole slew of things. Nonprofits and community orgs, we already know that. Municipalities and city departments often put out work. Foundations, universities, conferences, for-profit firms, you name it. There's a lot of people that have money to spend, and artists should be part of those discussions. And these are three really important things that I find in my work. So think about your own values when you do this work. Like relationship building should not be transactional. A lot of harm can be caused. So really being transparent and thoughtful and genuine. Follow through is super important. I know that sometimes we work super hard and we have so many things to do, but follow through helps other people. It honors other people's time so we can build healthy relationships. And integrity. Sometimes you shouldn't do something. Sometimes you got a contract and it will cause harm to the community. And like, you just should be empowered. You should feel empowered to say, no, I'm not going to be a part of it, because that impacts your work and your brand and your practice and ruins relationships that can open up new opportunities. And just in general, you shouldn't be doing work that is toxic. Okay, we got 3 minutes. So let me just leave you with this. This conversation is really important, and I encourage you all to like chat through it, talk to ACT more about it, or just have your own circles of conversation. But this idea of compensation versus pro bono. So in that process of trying to figure out how to value your work, first recognize inequity, who's getting paid and who's not, and why. Think about how to value your work. How much time are you putting in? How will this support your practice in the long run? So this is also connected. Impact of valuing your work in the ecosystem. Whether you choose to ask for compensation, that has a ripple effect. It goes beyond you. It means that other artists could potentially be put in a dangerous situation where they don't get compensated, or it's like you are helping to push people to make sure folks are compensated equally or at a better rate. So just always think of yourself when you're when you value your work, you're not only doing it for yourself, you're doing it for others. And be wary of institutions asking for free labor. When that happens, there's like a set of questions that I invite you to think about. What is that investment on your work? Because you can choose to do something for free. You know, I think one of the tricks I use is if it's going to be well documented, so that way I have work samples to submit to grants, that's going to be great. If it's going to amplify audience, if it's going to like be something where you can leverage, you know, what your circles and networks of people. And also if it's just something you care about, I think that's super important as well, because it's like you are the sole proprietor of your work and you control who you work with and what you create. And the other one, which we're all so bad at, is balancing life and work. Balancing life with work is super important because you don't want to crash and burn. And we do want to build healthier systems. And if we don't build healthier systems, if we continue to grind, we're not really transforming anything. We're just replicating oppression. Yeah, so I just wanted to leave you with a few resources because I have 1 minute. If you're starting to do freelance work or just build relationships with partners, think about the contracts you sign with them or the agreements. Try to never do work without an agreement so that you can make sure they pay you, because you never know. And always like think about, you need to keep intellectual property of your work. Sometimes these contracts, if you have friends or other people that can help you read through them or get like another perspective, or even lawyers in, you know, your circle, or pro bono lawyers, you know, just have them check that out, because oftentimes artists get locked out of their own work with just, it's probably not even intentional. They're just using really old language and contracts, but you should be able to say, I don't agree with this part. I want to keep ownership of my work. And then, you know, think about these things. And then I invite you to check out Wage, thewageforwork.com, because they have a really powerful manifesto that can help us think about valuing our work in a better way and more equitable way. And also the Union of Musicians, which was started by many amazing musicians here in Rhode Island, and they've been organized to get more just treatment and a quality of life and like living wage and all these things. So there's power in collective. And that's it, you know, I'm just gonna leave it there. And these questions to help you move along the way. What opportunities have you found in this moment? What are 2 things you've done to invest in yourself and in your practice? And where are you finding inspiration? Because we need to like keep finding sources of energy and inspiration so we can create work. We can't, you know, operate from empty vessels. So that's it. Thank you so much. This was like a super fast workshop on how to think about your work. Hopefully it was helpful. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Shay. Whoa. My artist self feels so fed by this information and reminders, and yeah, very grateful. I'm sure many in the room are, and I think it sets us up so well for thinking about when we return from our little break. We're about to have a 5-minute break. And when we come back, we're going to be getting into the nitty-gritty about, on a big picture level, systems level, what can the city of Providence, the businesses in Providence, the nonprofits in Providence, like what can we do as a city to ensure that artists are supported from the top down, as well as supporting ourselves kind of from the bottom up. So we'll have all those great conversations when we return. I'm going to ask you all to please return at 2:07. I'll put on some music for us from the AS220 summer mixtape, and we'll put some food for thought in the chat. So when you come back, grab your snack, take your bathroom break, and check out the chat where we will keep conversing, and we'll get ready to give our feedback for this cultural plan. So see you at 2:07.
Even when it's all washed away, even when it's all washed away. Most rappers I know are sociopaths. I can't tell them my business. They gon' put it in a tweet or a song for reactions I can't give them. When I started, I was low, I was gifted, just looking for a crack I could fit in. I was smitten with the feeling, now the love's gone, but the nigga still gon' get it. And I'm still gon' feel it, even when it's all washed away. Cause I feel your pain the same will remain, even when it's all washed away. And the ocean sways and they raise the stakes, and I make my stake and I can't let up cause they want me dead, but my shield is dead and my heart grew on some of the things you said, and the love you purged from my fingertips and the water salty. There's a recorder. And we cry to God, but we don't listen, and we hate ourselves like we don't listen when we hit the sun and observe the rays. I'm an ultraviolet stuck in the days. I'm ultraviolet in a passive lane, and I probably get canceled for burning the daisies of Mother Nature. Gave birth to an angel with fingernails that grew to razors. Pick your path as you turn the pages. I've seen it all and I felt the changes. I pray for love, but the roads get dangerous. Who am I? You're lesser than your neighbor, you decide. But be advised, you better act soon, cause it's do or die.
Know the truth, it gon' show its face another day. I've been hot for 2 weeks, so long and temperature. I can see the way they look at me all the day. Money blow, I keep seeing things I can't pretend. I'ma shoot just because I can't get it up. I'ma shoot, shut it up. When you call my name, it feels so great. And when you slam the door, it really turns me on. I just wanna be your girl. And when you shout so loud, all I wanna do is come right now. I think you're all that I've been waiting for. I just wanna be your girl. And some days can't be sorry, can't be sorted out. I'm a robber and I'm flying in your polluted sky. Ooh,
All right. It is, oh, I gave you an extra few seconds. It is 2:08. Welcome back.
That was lovely. What a great playlist.
Yes, I will give the link to the playlist in the chat. Tracy, could you add into the chat what some of the questions our groups will be going through in just a moment?
Thank you, MJ and Tracy. And before we actually jump into the breakout groups, I'm going to ask AM to lead us through a breath so we can get centered again before we kind of transition our time together into, feedback and discussion that ACT can then take and implement into the next cultural plan. So AM, can you lead us in a breath, please?
Sure. So as we're coming back to our little corners that Shay mentioned, grateful for you, Shay, and the experiences that you shared. You're coming off of that beautiful offering wisdom. Just want to center us back in to get us on the same page before we think about how the city can invest in the creative community and really going into these questions, bring ourselves back to center. So if we can roll the shoulders back, maybe find a little more comfort in our seat. And again, tap into the natural breath. Noticing the sensations. And I'll invite us just into one collective breath, a breath to center us back in this very important work as artists, as creators. Breathing in and out. Coming back to the screen, I'll pass it back over to you, Angel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, AM. I really needed that, mostly because I was so invigorated and excited after Shay spoke. Yeah, Shay, thank you so much for that. I agree. I saw some people going off in the chat asking for a longer training for artists, and I would sign up today. What's your Cash App? I'm coming through because that is I think we often think about arts education and training for young people, but as a full-blown adult, I need that. I know a bunch of people who would love that. And so can we make that happen, please? You don't have to answer right now, Shay, but I'll be in front row, absolutely. Thank you so much for that. I feel so excited to go into these breakout groups. So yeah, next up, we have 3 different topics and we're gonna kind of randomly group people into 3 different breakout rooms. The first topic, led by Valerie Tutson, will be a conversation around what does it mean to really be a working artist? Who's considered a working artist? Kind of linking back to the conversation that started this whole studio off. What do we actually mean in Providence when we say artist or working artist? How can we be more inclusive? And it also why does that matter when we're talking about resources and opportunities for people? And so Valerie Tutson will lead that conversation. Our second breakout group will really be about the artist survival. What do we need as working artists to not only survive, but thrive? inside Providence? You know, is it housing? Is it, you know, what are the many things that we need, and how can we get there? And then last but not least, we have our third breakout room facilitated by VADIC. Artist Survival will be facilitated by the amazing Christopher Johnson. And then our third group, the Art of Revolution, will be facilitated by VADIC Kawumba. Really taking a moment to think about, like, what is the artist's role in the revolution? We're in this really like chaotic and scary time, you know, for a lot of folks. And I think there's some consensus, at least within our city, that the artists are gonna have to be the ones at the front line, which we already are in a lot of ways. But what does that really mean? What do we need to do this revolutionary work? What is the, you know, beloved community that we want to create right here in Providence? And how can this be a microcosm for the larger world as we move forward through this time? So with that said, Janaea is going to break us into these breakout rooms. Have fun, and we'll see you in the main room in about 20 or so minutes.
Who else wants to jump in?
I kind of just wanted to jump in and say, if you did have some burning thoughts that you didn't get to express, feel free to put them in the chat on the side here, because we are recording that as well. Any fabulous big ideas, small thoughts, anything you have. Thank you.
Thanks. Did I cover most of what we talked about?
Yeah, coming from our conversation at the art of being a working artist, one thing I would add that came up is also, you know, a lot of culture that maybe might be unrecognized. For example, Black culture, hair artists, how, you know, many people need to have, you know, be connected to some kind of institution to be able to do their work as an artist. And specifically thinking about hair, how African Americans see the art of hair work as an art, and that might be a piece that in many other cultures there might be something like that is unrecognized. Does that feel like it? Did that feel like we covered everything for this group? Word. Next, for the art of survival with Chris Johnson. If there's one or two people who can vocalize for that.
Before we get started, I'm so sorry to have to do this to you. I don't know who Chris Johnson is.
Christopher.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate that.
You're welcome. Thank you for calling in. I appreciate that. So those questions were how COVID has changed the needs of working artists, what you need to thrive in the city as an artist, and how do we want to, as a city, invest in the creative community?
Does anybody from my group want to go before I start just spilling off the stuff that I wrote down over here? I know that we had somebody taking notes.
I was taking notes. I'm happy to grab a few main ideas.
Awesome. Thank you.
So we were talking about the art of survival, and we started with what we felt we needed to thrive in this city. And we talked, of course, about some of the basic needs of housing, food, the ability to take care of our families. We talked throughout our session about universal basic income, more investment in the arts in K-12 schools, in both formal and informal spaces. We saw a design opportunity in terms of setting up more opportunities for artists at many stages of their arts careers, not just like for young artists, but also for mid-career artists of various kinds, and helping people achieve their goals, whatever those goals are, because we're all in different kinds of journeys. And we thought mentorship kind of came up throughout, different forms of mentorship, both for newcomers to the city and for longtime people, and helping one another out, really. We talked about an artist's bill of rights for the city to really help us advocate for ourselves and for arts administrators to set the standards for our city and make sure that all artists are being treated fairly and paid well. We talked too about the challenge of affordable space, that it's getting less and less easy to have those spaces, both for learning in and creating in. More industry jobs needed, like animation studios, game studios, exhibit design studios. There's all this talent, and people leave because there's not a place to do your day job, basically. We talked too about more business sponsorship, philanthropic support, development. We talked then about how COVID has changed the needs of working artists, that there's a technology gap. We talked about this a couple times, that for some artists, it was easy to shift gears, and for others, they were left behind and lost a lot of income due to either not having the kind of tech access, or having kind of this isolation and inability to shift because of their particular practice and lack of community.
We also talked, if you don't mind me stepping in a little bit
Please
here.
do. Yep.
Well, we were talking about how when COVID hit, there was a labor situation where people were working on things and it was just too much, and there should be a way to share the labor, disperse it throughout the artists in the community, and how everything shifted to video and there was not enough platforms for people to actually connect with. I think MJ already mentioned that there should be a mentorship so that people can, you know, from the different 3 stages of the art, from where arts are, so that the middle ground people can mentor the beginning people, and the older people can, the more advanced artists can mentor the people in the middle stages, so that we can move everything on. We were talking about templates for equitable and just contracts for artists, so that along with the Bill of Rights, so that we're not just out here doing getting paid unfair wages. And there was an anti-racism pledge that was mentioned. And safe and affordable spaces for artists, because living spaces and creation spaces that are safe and affordable, because a lot of times fees are tacked into our workspaces, and we can't afford to stay there. Does anybody else, in an investment into the arts, how there should be? I think MJ already mentioned a philanthropic investment, and as well as a citywide investment. And we were in UBI was probably mentioned 3 or 4 times, but just a universal basic income, so that the artists can, you know, those of us who were doing work, you know, well, one person mentioned how they were creating a platform for artists to come and use it as a portal, but the work became, it was free labor for them, and it was too much for them. But a universal basic income might actually help with these kind of tasks that are being performed in the city by our artists. Anybody else want to add anything? I think that's it from me. Okay, well, that's it from my group.
Christopher, if I could just interject, I just wanted to elevate one of the last comments that Neil made. And it was the idea of Providence really supporting and promoting its artists on the statewide stage, on the national stage, and on an international stage. And from that perspective, you know, the immense talent that comes from Providence and how to elevate the work outside of out of the city was a valuable contribution to the conversation too.
Awesome. So if that feels fully encompassing for that group, yes. Thank you, Christopher Johnson, for holding that space, and Valerie for holding our space. So we have about 3 minutes for the Art of Revolution, which was held by VADIC. Ask questions such as, how can Providence how can Providence become the beloved community? The microcosm of what what larger worlds could be. What is the role in this revolution? What support do we need to implement the collective visioning process and that we know needs to happen? And what does it look like to put arts and culture at the heart of what makes this city a dynamic and inclusive place to be? Also, what specific changes are we saying that the arts have a role in?
Wow, that sounds like a lot that we were supposed to talk about. We got to some of it. We went around, folks, we started by building a collective definition of the beloved community, and people resoundingly, the theme was arts and having arts be at the center. So in the conversation where we asked about how to make arts or center arts at the heart to make Providence more dynamic and these things around the arts, the conversation came back to what folks in Christopher Johnson's group and other groups were talking about, which is investment. One of the major investments that folks were interested in was investing in our young people. We have a representative from the West End Rec Center, and so she showed us some of the different murals that ACT has worked with the Rec Center to like put up, and just like hammering home the idea of like putting the arts within the children's grasp in school and out of school, as well as investing in artists so that they're at the table to make decisions and have conversations. I will ask Tracy, since you did take the notes, to like jump in, but another point that came up was like how to make these investments is to reallocate funding from other sources that the city may have. And so the conversation around the public safety budget came up in reallocating that money to education and arts education, as well as arts as culture, arts as ritual, and not just as a transactional thing that happens inside of a museum. Those are the themes that were coming out and bubbling up. Tracy, I wanted to open it up to you since you were taking the notes to share any other high level things in our last minute, 30 seconds, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, sure. I really enjoyed Susie's comment that that ties into Isla's idea that art shouldn't just be a craft. So we're talking about young people and training them in the arts field and elevating their perception of what art and artists are, and that not fine art in the classical sense, but that we should move away from craft and think of it as something that we should really plaster the city with to create it as a value system for the city, which I think we've started to do in a way, and we could expand on. We did also get the suggestion that artists should be embedded in each city and municipal department as part of the decision-making table. A lot of it focused on younger folks, which is really great to see because they are our revolution. And so, let's see. Yeah, reallocating funds and trying to figure out how we can invest in these programs, public school funding for arts. And let's see here. A lot of moralistic moves towards basically inculcating young folks about the value and the use and the revolutionary purpose of art as they start up earlier, and the thought that it's cheaper to do it when they're young. And I think that was a really good point that we were. Visibility is another one. So similar to what was just mentioned of spreading the word about Providence as an arts and cultural center, not just in the state, but beyond, and making it accessible to the other cities in the state. So we're at 2:50, so I believe we are moving on to the next part of the agenda here, so just on time.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much to all of the groups for reporting out. Thank you to our awesome facilitators, Vadik Kawumba, Christopher Johnson, and Valerie Tutson. And thank you, AM, for bringing us through that last exercise to synthesize and hear about what each group cooked up in their breakout room. So thank you so much for that. There's so many highlights and pieces of inspiration that I know I'm going to be taking away from this session, and also more, I'm sure even more that I'm going to be excited to read about, because as you know, when you're facilitating and trying to make sure things go smooth, it's hard to process everything, but just hearing everything and seeing the chat go off, I think this studio is gonna, add a lot of vibrancy to the cultural plan. So thank you so much, everyone who has participated. I think that's all for me. I want to kick it over to ACT. So I know Lizzie had to dip out for another meeting. Gina or someone from ACT, do you want to talk a little bit about, next steps for the cultural plan and how we can participate moving forward?
Yeah, definitely. I can talk to y'all about that. Thank you again. Thank you so much for being a part of this today. Thank you for your hard work and your dedication and your energy and your positivity and just bringing your love and light to a bureaucratic process and making it what it needs to be and not what it needs to not be, for lack of a better way to describe it. Yeah, so in terms of next steps, we have a few more planning studios. We have one on the future of arts teaching and learning. So anyone who's interested in supporting young people, but also just learning and teaching the arts the entire life cycle. So not just K through 12, not just kids and youth, but through adulthood and through elders, and supporting arts opportunities for learning and teaching throughout the entire life cycle. That's coming up on October 27th. And we'll also have a planning studio on resilient arts nonprofits. That's not yet scheduled, but coming up probably early November. And in terms of staying in touch on this topic area, what we're doing for all the studios, we're going to be taking all this information that you all generously thought up. And we're going to be putting it into context in writing. We're going to start writing the plan. We'll release that slowly and then give a chance for people to write in comments if you want to. You can also be a part of a focus group. So we have a really simple Google form. So you can just get together with your family and friends. You can get together with your organizations, with other artists, with your house, and think through these questions around the cultural plan. Send those into us. We will incorporate that information in the planning document. And then we will release a draft through another public meeting so we can kind of walk through it together. And the goal is to have this out by spring. So we're looking towards like spring equinox, new beginnings, hopefully a vaccine, getting together and sharing this out. So I'll throw the, oh, thank you. MJ just threw the cultural planning blog page in the chat. So you can click on that. On there, you can also register for additional studios, find the focus group link, and of course, stay in touch with us. We are here to support and build with you all. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Gina. Yeah, and once again, we want to give a special shout out to ACT for facilitating the creation of the cultural plan and more specifically helping us with the studio. Shout out MJ and Tracy and Janaea. Thank you so much, Shay, for coming through and dropping those jewels on us, like best 20 minutes I saw in the chat, someone put that we've had in a long time. Thank you so much for that. And we're rooting for a training led by Shay Rivera. Let's go. Thank you to Vadik Kumba, Christopher Johnson, Valerie Tutson, and AM. Super shout out for leading those breaths that are life-saving and helped really center us throughout this studio. And of course, Neil and Ruth for talking about some bright spots on a national level, and really to all of you for helping us to unpack what it means to be a working artist today and what it'll mean, in the next 10 years and how that reality, what our needs are and what the needs are people coming up behind us, right, are gonna be. And so really, thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. We appreciate it. And with that said, I'll leave some space in case MJ, Tracy, or anyone else, any of the speakers want to add additional comments, and then we'll wrap it up.
I'll just say thank you, and I would love for everyone to please unmic yourself and let's give a collective whoop and show our gratitude, a thank you, a little noise of whatever kind, and let's celebrate and get off Zoom and do some stretching, all right?
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you
guys.
Take care.
And our thanks